The novel? Oh, Ava, are you still wasting time on that little project? Honestly, you should be focused on getting your certification renewed. That writing thing is becoming a time-consuming hobby. The hook was delivered by my sister, Chloe, with a clinical, surgical precision that cut deeper than any shout. We were gathered around the sprawling granite island in my parents' kitchen for the annual summer barbecue, a mandatory event designed to celebrate the visible successes of the Hayes family and passively scorn my invisible failures. Chloe, 39, the golden child, wore a pristine white linen dress and the smug assurance of a successful investment banker whose life was perfectly optimized. My name is Ava Hayes. I am 36 years old, and my current job, according to my family, was perpetual unemployment disguised by digital distractions. For the last 5 years, I had poured every ounce of my emotional and intellectual life into a single project. A fictional novel detailing the psychological manipulation, the casual cruelty, and the suffocating emotional pressure cooker that was the Hayes family experience. To them, it was the ultimate coping mechanism of a failure. To me, it was my only chance at survival, my long-game revenge. Arthur and Eleanor Hayes, my parents, were pillars of the suburban corporate community. Arthur was a partner in commercial real estate. Eleanor ran the local women's charity board. They defined success by annual bonuses, square footage, and predictable, linear career paths. My path, dropping out of my high-pressure corporate job 6 years ago due to severe anxiety and finding solace in writing, was a source of deep, persistent shame. The background conflict was the decade of condescension surrounding any pursuit that didn't generate easily quantifiable status. They provided financial backing for Chloe's every venture, rewarding her stable, predictable life. My small, cluttered apartment, my quiet discipline, and my intense focus on a narrative structure were all dismissed as an inability to cope with the real world. My mother, Eleanor, approached, her face arranged in the familiar mask of weary pity. "Chloe's right, darling. It's lovely that you're expressing yourself, but, darling, what about equity? What about your 401k? That novel, I assume, hasn't paid your rent this month, has it?" The humiliation scene began instantly. They understood my financial vulnerability was my weakest point. I relied on small, remote editing gigs to cover my city rent, and my savings were razor-thin, poured into research and software. "It will pay for itself eventually, Mother," I replied, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. "Eventually is not security, Ava," my father, Arthur, interjected, pouring himself an expensive glass of scotch. "Security is a signed contract, a salary statement. You're living on borrowed time and hope. It's reckless. We just want to see you stable." "Stable," Chloe echoed, examining her immaculate manicure. "Like me, I just closed the deal on the new D'Angelo building. That's a 7-figure commission, Ava. That's what happens when you focus on tangible assets, not ephemeral fairy tales." The laughter that followed, a mix of my brother-in-law's polite snicker and my mother's pitying sigh, was the signature sound of my family life. I retreated to the patio, the heat of the summer sun externalizing the acute burning shame in my chest. I sat there, observing the elaborate performance of their success, feeding the final, crucial details into the narrative I was building. Their specific dialogue, Chloe's smugness, Arthur's financial dismissal. It was all going into the book, fictionalized, amplified, and given the weight of eternal truth. 2 years later, the deepening the humiliation phase was complete. I had faced 147 agent rejections and 32 publisher rejections. The book, The Gilded Lie, was brilliant, but commercially risky, deemed too dark and too niche for a debut. I was running on fumes, my savings exhausted, the corporate ladder now completely out of reach. I was forced to attend a family dinner, the current event trigger, to ask for a loan, the single most humiliating act possible. "A loan? To publish that diary of yours?" Chloe demanded, resting her chin on her hand, utterly enjoying my defeat. "It's a novel, Chloe, and I want to self-publish while submitting it to small presses," I pleaded, my voice thin. "I need 6 months of rent covered. I can pay you back immediately when the book sells." "No major publisher picked it up, Ava. That tells you everything," Arthur declared, finality in his voice. "We will give you the money, but it comes with a condition. You drop the writing. You use the 6 months to get certified in something real. Real estate appraisal, perhaps. Something that contributes to the family legacy." The pressure was immense. They were not offering help. They were offering to buy my creative surrender. I saw the desperate, trapped future they were offering me, financial stability in exchange for intellectual death. I looked at my mother, who simply nodded, her expression confirming the ultimatum. It's for your own good, darling. You need to put down the pen of fantasy and pick up the pencil of reality. I stood up, the refusal burning in my throat. Thank you for the offer, but I refuse the conditions. I'll find another way. I left the dinner in a desperate haze. I didn't take the loan. Instead, I liquidated my last remaining asset, a tiny inherited stock portfolio, and moved to a remote, cheap cabin upstate. I spent 6 months living off canned goods and sheer stubbornness, using the capital to pay a small independent editor and a freelance cover designer. I officially self-published The Gilded Lie under a pseudonym, E.V. Asher. For the next 2 years, the book existed in quiet obscurity, selling a few hundred copies, mostly to friends and a niche online community. The Hayes family continued their mockery, fueled by my perceived continued financial instability. Still writing your little fantasy novel? Chloe asked during a strained holiday phone call. Have you bought a single new dress with those sales yet? The book is doing fine, I lied, the shame of the low sales a constant weight. But the secret success had already begun. The book's small, intense online following included an eccentric, successful producer named Leo Moretti, known for turning emotionally complex, literary projects into massive cinematic hits. Leo didn't see a niche book. He saw a blockbuster script waiting to happen. 6 months ago, Leo's production company, Phoenix Rising Studios, quietly bought the film rights to The Gilded Lie for a high 7-figure sum. I maintained absolute secrecy, depositing the money into a private account and continuing my quiet life, refusing to give the Hayes family any information until the humiliation was global and complete. The trigger for the climax arrived today, the annual Hayes Family Gala, a black-tie corporate event celebrating Arthur's promotion to CEO of his commercial real estate firm. My attendance was mandatory. I arrived in a simple but exquisitely tailored black gown I had purchased with a fraction of my advance. I was calm, confident, and utterly prepared for the performance. The Humiliation Scene 2.0 began in the grand ballroom. My mother, Eleanor, took me aside immediately, examining my dress with a critical eye. That's a nice dress, Alara, she conceded. But Chloe's wearing Valentino. You really should consider something with a bit more structure. Where are you working now? Still that little editing job? I'm focusing on my writing, I replied. Focusing, Arthur boomed, approaching with a colleague. She's focused on writing, David. That's my daughter, the one still avoiding a proper career path. You know, Chloe is managing a multi-million-dollar fund now. That's real focus. Chloe arrived, shimmering in gold, leading her husband and another corporate figure. Ava, I heard you were still submitting that novel to people. Honestly, darling, you should just turn it into a blog. It would be less embarrassing. I smiled. A genuine, private smile. That's actually not necessary, Chloe. The book has been quite busy. Busy doing what? Filling up storage space? Chloe laughed, the final condescending shot. At that moment, the lights dimmed. The gala was about to begin, but first, a tribute to the evening's entertainment sponsor, Phoenix Rising Studios. The massive central screen flickered to life, showing the studio logo. The audience murmured with excitement. Phoenix Rising Studios was known for massive, critically acclaimed, high-budget dramas. Before we begin the main program, the announcer's voice boomed. Phoenix Rising is proud to give this exclusive audience a first look at the official trailer for our most anticipated film of the year, a sweeping psychological drama that asks, how do you escape the prison built by the people who claim to love you? The title card flashed across the screen in bold, haunting type, The Gilded Lie. I watched my family's collective composure shatter. Arthur choked on his champagne. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Chloe stopped laughing instantly, her golden veneer dissolving into shock. They knew the title. It was the title of the little fantasy novel they had ridiculed for years. The climax and revelation began with chilling, immediate recognition. The opening shot was a perfect replica of the suffocating, opulent living room of my childhood home. Then the dialogue started, on screen. A beautiful actress, famous for her intense dramatic roles, playing the protagonist, sat opposite an older, stern man who looked exactly like Arthur. Actress, voice breaking. I just need 6 months, Dad, to publish it. I'll pay you back. Actor. Booming, identical tone to Arthur. We will give you the money, but it comes with a condition. You drop the writing. You use the 6 months to get certified in something real. Put down the pen of fantasy and pick up the pencil of reality. The audience gasped, a sound of collective recognition. Chloe's gasp was louder than anyone's. She stared at the screen, her terror growing as the trailer showed scene after scene of emotional manipulation, financial dismissal, and condescending cruelty. The antagonist, the golden sister, played by an Oscar-nominated actress, was shown mocking the protagonist's hobby and tiny apartment. The dialogue was almost verbatim. Arthur staggered back from his chair, his face white. That's our house. That's what I said to her. The final shot of the trailer was devastating. The protagonist stands alone, looking at the camera, tears streaming down her face. Actress, voiceover, shattering silence. The most dangerous lies are the ones told in the name of love. And the price of my freedom was telling the whole world the truth. The music swelled. The title flashed. The screen went black, plunging the room into deafening silence. I walked toward the head table, the sole figure moving in the frozen room. Congratulations on your promotion, Dad, I said, my voice steady, addressing Arthur. It's a shame you'll have to resign in the morning. Resign? Arthur stammered. Yes, I confirmed. The film is based on my novel, The Gilded Lie. It is a fictionalized account of the emotional environment I was raised in. It opens globally on Christmas Day, the same day your firm launches its major ad campaign. You see, the studio tracked my research. They know everything about our family. You are the central villain in a massive cinematic psychological drama. No major corporate board will tolerate that kind of scandal, Arthur. Your career is over. Chloe finally found her voice, high and hysterical. You told the world. You made us the villains! We were trying to help you! You called me a failure, Chloe, I stated. And I turned the script around. The hobby just bought the entire production budget for a major studio release. I didn't wait for their response. I left the ballroom, the silence of the horrified elite serving as the loudest applause of my life. The long game, the cinematic consequence. The fallout and long-term consequence were immediate, brutal, and meticulously targeted at the family's core values: status, privacy, and financial control. The financial and professional implosion. Arthur Vance, the proud pillar of commerce, resigned the next morning, forced into immediate, humiliating retirement. The board of his commercial real estate firm determined that the scandal, the public identification of the CEO as the central abuser in a blockbuster film, was too costly to endure. He lost his pension, his status, and his lifelong career. His attempts to fight back legally were laughably ineffective. I had ensured that The Gilded Lie contained enough fictionalization, changed names, combined events, shifted locations, to be legally unassailable while remaining emotionally and structurally true. My lawyers shut down his cease and desist letters with brutal efficiency, armed with signed documents proving I had sold the rights long before he issued his empty threats. The humiliation forced him to liquidate his assets, including the family home, to cover legal and financial losses. The social death, Eleanor and Chloe. Eleanor, who had always valued social standing above all else, was the next casualty. Her charity board immediately dropped her. Her friends, recognizing the specific cruel dialogue in the trailer, quietly cut her off. She tried to deny the film's source material, claiming the resemblance was coincidental, but the public identification was too precise. She became the subject of pity and whispered condemnation, a fate worse than poverty for a woman who lived for status. Chloe, the golden sister, suffered a uniquely ironic fate. Her successful investment firm had a major distribution and marketing partnership with Phoenix Rising Studios, the very company that produced The Gilded Lie. She was suddenly forced to professionally manage the distribution and marketing of the film that exposed her as a cruel, condescending antagonist. Every meeting, every ad campaign, every billboard featuring the haunting tagline, "The most dangerous lies are the ones told in the name of love," was a direct assault on her professional pride. She couldn't quit, as her firm was contractually obligated. She couldn't fight it, as the scandal would ruin her. She was forced to sell the family's secret, humiliating truth on a global scale, meticulously ensuring the cinematic revenge was a financial success. The protagonist's triumph, I, Evie Asher, the author, retreated further into my anonymity, directing the success from a serene estate I purchased with my initial advance. A home with endless storage, light, and silence. I only granted interviews under the condition of strict non-disclosure of my family's identity, ensuring their public suffering was self-inflicted and based entirely on their own fear of being recognized. 3 years later, The Gilded Lie won 2 Oscars. The global gross revenue was astronomical. I was wealthy beyond the entire combined assets of the Hayes family. My quiet success, a massive, unassailable fortress. I initiated the final act of poetic justice. I tracked down the location of the old family home, the house they were forced to sell, now owned by a generic holding company. I quietly acquired the deed using an anonymous shell corporation. The final confrontation was muted and cold. I invited Arthur, Eleanor, and Chloe to meet me at a neutral location, the law office of Marcus, my counsel. Arthur and Eleanor looked defeated, aged by scandal and failure. Chloe was haggard, her designer suit looking like a uniform of resignation. Victor was nowhere to be seen. He was now a ghost in the corporate world. I asked you here for 2 reasons, I stated, placing a thick folder on the polished mahogany table. First, the royalties from The Gilded Lie are immense. I have established a non-recourse trust in the names of Arthur, Eleanor, and Chloe Hayes, providing a generous but minimal annual stipend. It is enough to live debt-free, but not enough to regain status or control. You may sign the release forms. Eleanor lunged forward, her hands shaking, ready to sign anything. Arthur simply stared at the pen, his face expressionless. The second reason, I continued, is closure. You are homeless, Arthur. You are socially irrelevant, Eleanor. And you, Chloe, are forced to market the truth of your own cruelty. I slid a second sealed envelope across the table. Inside this envelope is the deed to the Hayes family home, the home you loved, the home you lost, and the home you are now financially incapable of buying back. Arthur slowly picked up the envelope. I purchased it under an anonymous corporation, I explained. I intend to keep it in the family, so you don't worry about preserving your legacy. Chloe looked at me, a flicker of hope, desperation, and understanding in her eyes. You're giving it back to us? We can move back home? No, I stated, the final unanswerable truth. The house will be converted into the new headquarters for the Evie Asher Foundation, a charity dedicated to providing financial and psychological aid to victims of familial emotional abuse. I will be living there, working there, and hosting global conferences there. I looked at Arthur, meeting his gaze for the final time. The house remains in the family, Arthur, but it will no longer be a place of cruelty. It will be a place of healing. Every time you drive past, every time you see the new sign, you will be reminded that your failed philosophy has been completely replaced by the success of the person you scorned. Arthur stared at the deed. The reality that his lifelong asset was now the permanent, physical symbol of my triumph and his downfall, too much to bear. He let the envelope fall onto the table. You won, Alara, he whispered, a final guttural acknowledgement. You won everything. I simply nodded, accepting the truth, the validation finally complete. I won, Arthur, when I decided that the pen of fantasy was stronger than the pencil of your reality. I stood up. Sign the trust documents. My driver will be waiting outside. I walked out of the law office, leaving the Hayes family to confront their new reality. They were the permanently recognized villains in a story that had become a global truth. The movie adaptation was simply the beginning of their new, humbled existence. The true victory was the unshakable foundation of my sanity and success, built entirely on the debris of their broken pride.